G'day, we're live, and I'm David Applegate, author of the book The Boyhood of Cade, book one of the Empire of Elves, and welcome to Future Fantasy Empire. Today with me is Gabriel Constans, the author of Papa's Favourite Smoothies, A Brave Year, 52 Weeks Being Mindful, and The Last Conception, both in film and book. Welcome to the show and introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, David. It's a pleasure to be with you. I live in California, that part of the world, and I've been writing for quite some time. Started out as a journalist, writing a lot of nonfiction work and newspapers and magazines around the country and the world. And then about 30 years ago, I started on my hand at novels and have been learning how to do it better ever since. And about 10 years ago, well, maybe 15, I lose track of time the older I get, I started writing screenplays and been practicing and getting better and better at that each year. So one of the things I love to do is play ukulele, and I'm married and have lots of kids and grandkids.
So you're busy as. Now, when did you first realize you wanted to be a writer?
I think when I was in high school, there was we were doing a lot of anti-war protests. At that time, the Vietnam War was still going on, and I started an alternative high school paper, which they tried to arrest me for, but couldn't. And I realized that you can have some effect with what you write at times. And that's sort of what was the first thing that grabbed me or that got me interested. And then I wrote for a number of years after that, and then really didn't write for about 7 or 8 years much at all. And then my wife read some things I was writing or playing around with, and she said, you should get back to that seriously. And so I've sort of been an addict to write ever since that time and have not stopped. So that was the first thing that got me interested.
That's yeah, a lot of people, they get the bug when they, but not many finish their first. Not many finish their first. Tell me about your books.
Well, there's those are just some of the latest ones. The Last Conception is a book about a gay woman Indian American woman who's hasn't come out to her family yet, who keep trying to set her up to get married. And she finds out from her parents that not only is that's not the problem, but they insist she have a baby because she's the last in line of a long spiritual tradition. And she's the last biological one in the family that could have a child. So she doesn't know, I won't say who it is, but she doesn't know if she believes it or not, but her girlfriend believes it more than she does. And so that's the first book that you mentioned. And then that was made into a movie, and they changed a lot of it into a rom-com. I wrote the screenplay for that as well. That came out in 2020, and that's been a lot of fun it's available all around the world now on numerous platforms and streaming services and channels. And then for something, well, not completely different, but a little different, is the other book is called A Brave Year, 52 Weeks Being Mindful. And the BRAVE is an acronym for Before Reacting, Access, Validate, and Explore, which is just a long way of saying to stop and meditate, stop and be mindful of what you're doing. And it involves different exercises and things you can do on a daily basis. And that's written after decades and decades of practicing in all different kinds of environments and teaching meditation in prisons and a lot of different places. And then the latest book is book about smoothies called Papa's Favorite Smoothies. And that is a sort of an update of a couple, which are some of the first smoothie books that came out in the States many years ago. And that's sort of an update of that.
Sorry, I just got an important message on a job. Sorry, when you take a job, you got to take a job.
Yeah.
Sorry about that interruption. How do you prepare for your new book?
How did I prepare for it?
Yeah, when you start, how do you prepare?
Well, I used a fair number of the recipes from the other two books from the past and added some other new ones too, some of my favorites. That's why it's called my Papa's Favorite Smoothies. And prepared on how to have it laid out. And the illustrator, Jane Cornwall, who lives in Scotland, is the illustrator for it. And she's also the publisher from her publishing company, Jane Studio Press. So we worked on that together, and she did such a wonderful job. It just looks fantastic. And it's a lot like I always originally intended the first one to be. A big publishing company bought the first one, Penguin Putnam Publishing, and they changed the title and everything in it. And even though it made the most money of any book I've ever done, it didn't really look how I wanted it to. So I'm really happy with the way this one turned out.
That's good. Just wish wish sometimes myself, when you set up something, that it all falls serendipitously into place. Sometimes things do not go right for everybody. What are your inspirations?
Mostly other writers and screenplay writers and films and books. There's Zora Neale Hurston, wrote Their Eyes Are Watching God. She's probably one of my favorite of all time as far as writers. And Isabel Allende did House of Spirits, Chitra Divakaruni, Toni Morrison, James Baldwin. I wish I could write 1/100th as well as any one of those folks do. So every time I read a really good book or see a really good movie, it always inspires me to keep trying to practice and to write better.
Sorry, I'm having. I have a commission for a new cover. And he's asking details, and I'm asking for time, and he's saying he's got to go to work. So sorry, I had to answer the message. Now, do you have a particular?
Do you do covers for different? Do you do covers?
No. I'm not doing covers. I'm commissioning art.
Oh, art.
Yes, I'm commissioning art from an artist. And
oh, nice. How did you find the artist? Is it through somebody?
Yeah, I met him on Twitter, and he's just finished one job and he's off to work, but he needs the payment before he could go, which is fair enough. He wants to be paid for his work. I understand that.
Are you commissioning them to do some art for your home or for a book cover? Or?
No, I'm doing it for my Patreon.
Oh, great! There are so many good artists and really good artists and writers on Twitter and the creative community on there. I've met and found a lot of people on there.
Yes, I found a lot of people. Unfortunately, with the time zone, it's late for him, and he doesn't want to wait around for the money. I can understand that. He's tired. He's just got home from work. He's just finished the artwork. He's been working for the last couple of hours, so I just paid him just now.
Right on camera. You did it
Yes.
right on camera, live.
Yeah. I'm sorry, sorry to just interrupt.
No, it's great. I'm glad you got it done, and that
You
worked.
know, I think you understand of all people what it's like when you do it. There are a lot of creatives out there that they're all they're all looking for work. I mean, I'm trying to always build up my Patreon community, but unfortunately, these days a lot of people drop off. It's very hard to find support for artists these days. There's just so many options,
Yeah, it is.
It's a pay to win industry. It's
It is, and so much art is being done also on using all these programs now that you can do art on your computer with um, all the different
Suppose, well,
softwares.
there's always for over a decade, there's been 3D has come more and more accessible. I mean, Poser has been around for a long time. 3D Daz, there is 3D Workshop. There's the Google program. Google has changed its name a couple of times. There's
Yeah,
Microsoft. But I remember all the way back to Autodesk.
yeah,
Autodesk 3D was like $3,500, and
yeah,
it's come
yeah,
now. You can go get the student version for $99, and
I
it's
know.
last year's, but still,
Yeah,
it's more accessible than before. The amount of libraries, the amount of studio artists out there on minimum wage
yeah,
for
yeah,
studios. I mean, it's big, and
yeah. With
it's going to be the same for writers. I mean, ChatGPT is taking work off writers.
yeah, and there's Dreamweaver and Photoshop and all those
They're
programs.
the final touch-up products, but you can get you can be the worst drawer in the world, and all you have to do is describe it, and you'll get it.
That's,
Somebody will do it, or and there's a couple of AI programs out there that'll do it, and
yeah, it's pretty amazing. You could have a
uh,
whole show. You could have a whole show about that.
yeah, I was going to look into it, but at the moment, some of these are hidden behind paywalls, and others they don't look so good at the moment. But it's just what we have to deal with. We're just
Yeah,
going to get squeezed out. They'll take your favorite writer and just they'll create an Agatha Christie novel every 2 to 3 years, and long after even the estate has forgotten about it. There'll be
right.
hundreds and thousands of them. Because
She's come back to life. She's come back to life.
yeah,
She wrote another book.
because all the digital libraries, they just pump the digital library in and say, I don't exactly know how it does it, but it rewrites. They rewrite classics.
Yeah,
I
that was interesting. You mentioned Agatha Christie, like
Yeah,
about until about 8 or 9 years ago, I had no interest in mysteries or reading Agatha Christie, and then I started wondering, and I found out she has had more books published in more languages and sold more books than any other book in the world other than the Bible. And I was thinking, wow, why? What is it about her? And I started reading some of their stories, and then I saw why. There's,
yeah.
she has some. They're so good, especially for that time and place. There are some that are um, have some racism in them as far as how people in the stories treat other people.
But
Um,
she was set in the period at that time.
right, but other than the way of how she wrote and her writing and the stories that she wrote were so good, and they also reflected so much of what was going on politically at the time. I read every single thing she wrote, and from when she first started writing, it was like 40 years history of what was going on in England at the time, and politically, culturally, all those things were incorporated into the different stories. So it was really interesting.
I remember the controversy over the one set on the island, 10, what's it called now? 10 Fingers, I
Right, right,
think.
right, right.
And I can understand the title given the context at the time when the word was used more broadly than it is now, when it wasn't a racist word, but it became a racist dog whistle. So I can understand that. But you can understand in the context that these were 10 people completely written off by a particular individual who just pretty much, if it wasn't for the publisher, we would have never, there'd always be a debate which one was the killer, but the publisher decided they wanted the final chapter, and they got the final chapter in the end. They had their way in the end. But if there was anybody who should have been paid $1 billion, it's her.
Yeah.
I know some people don't deserve the money they get, and other people don't get the money they deserve.
Yeah, it's amazing because she wrote at least one, sometimes two books a year, and every one was good. There's only 2 or 3 out of like 70 books that I read of hers, or 70 of her writings. I don't think they're all books. There's only 2 or 3 that I thought were sort of, average, but that's pretty amazing odds out of so many. So
yes, but I believe that she's probably one of the most rewritten after Shakespeare.
yeah,
I think Shakespeare's like there's over 400 movies in his name, and then she's in the top 5 of rewrites, and so many mysteries out there you wouldn't know from the start unless you're a Negative Christie fan. You go, oh, I know that one.
or mysteries that her stories influenced, even if it wasn't hers. Yeah,
because mystery writers know the framework, and I believe the framework is very familiar. You start with the whodunit, you work back through the investigation to the inciting incident, and then you fill in all the filler.
yeah. Just recently on a TV show, I can't remember which one it was. It was a series. I think it was a British series. They did sort of the opposite. It was an American series. They show exactly I know what it's called. It's called Poker Face. It was this American series with this Cleone Leone, this great actress. And they did the opposite. They show exactly who killed the person at the beginning and how it happened. And then the rest of the whole of that episode, and each episode was different, the rest of that entire episode was showing how she's trying to figure out how it happened and all the people she comes in contact with. And the premise of the story is that this person, she is somebody who's running herself from something that happened, and she meets these people, and that she can tell if somebody's telling the truth. For some reason, she has some gift that she knows if somebody's telling the truth.
Right.
So anyway, it's fascinating. It's the only one I've ever seen different from like you were saying, the usual plot for mysteries. This one is it's like the total reverse. So
yeah, they're giving you the answer first,
mm-hmm.
but then the hook is, how is it solved?
Yeah. Yes. How does she solve it, especially?
How does she solve it using the fact that she doesn't have $1 billion in forensics?
Right. She has nothing. She just takes, awful jobs wherever she goes. She's traveling around because she doesn't want to be found, and she meets all these people.
Well, you can understand if anybody who had a psychic,
yeah. Well, she's not psychic. She just knows if somebody's telling the truth or not.
Yeah. Well, that would be So.
Yeah. Anyway, it was interesting.
Yes. Sent the wrong link to Z. Sorry. No wonder. Well, I sent him the right. I should have the right link now for the link to do the YouTube. Yes. I can't believe I sent the wrong link. Okay, should have the right link now and should be able to tweet it. But of course, most of our views will come much later. because of multiple time zones around the world. Now, you've talked about various writers. Do you have a particular favorite?
I think I mentioned them. Yeah, the Toni Morrison, James Baldwin.
Zora? You
Somebody,
mentioned Zora when we were talking.
yeah,
Your eyes were watching God.
Yeah, and Chitra Diva Karuni, and there's one J.E. Leake. She's so good. I just read the third in this series of her. That it's historical fiction that takes place during World War II, and the fourth one doesn't come out until this December, and I can't wait to read it. So, J.L. Leake. Yeah. So there's so many. I mean, it's amazing how well some people can write.
Ah, yes, absolutely. Now, two of the, I believe, two of the biggest science fiction writers did come out of California. Herbert, who is the only one that comes to mind at the moment, who wrote the Dune series.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I hate the fact that people are so ignorant, they don't think and realize that they don't even look at when it was published. It came out before Star Wars, yet for some reason, everybody has this Mandela effect where they think Star Wars came out first, that Star Wars came out before everything else.
Yeah.
It's very weird because, and of course, there's another one, I can't remember his name. Heinemann. Is it Heinemann? Came out. It's just, there's just places in the world, California, not to brag, the east coast of Australia and Ireland. A lot of writers seem to have concentrated into a few areas around the world.
Yeah.
Although Agatha Christie came out of London, didn't she?
Yeah, and there's a lot of writers in London. I mean, too, and H.G. Wells and
H.G. Wells. Yeah,
and yeah, there's a lot. So.
Yeah. I don't like all of H.G.L.'s work, but The Time Machine, that's an amazing story.
Yeah, and Ray Bradbury. Yeah.
But Dune is just an amazing story about the dangers of charisma, and people don't actually understand that. It's just one of those amazing stories that I just, there's a lot of research there to be done.
That's true. There's a lot of people think science fiction is just a lot of escapism, but there's a lot of truth in science fiction. So
Foundation, the best laid plan, the best made plans, the Sheldon theory, and all these things. He sets up and spends an absolute fortune, has a dedicated cult following, and just that one spanner in the works that he never accounted for, and it just totally comes out with a totally different, unexpected outcome. And that's just how it goes. It's just a well-made tale of a cautionary tale. The best made plans of mice and men go astray.
Yeah.
Or if you're in the military, the plan never survives contact with the enemy. It's just those two meet, and it's very well. I mean, sure, most science fiction is world building. You're building the world. Especially look at Dune with its world building, and it's always done through conversations. And usually in the industry, the last thing they want is lots of conversations. But the conversations in the book, it's you have the visual medium when you're doing the movie to do the world building, so you could cut out a lot of conversations. If you've ever watched the Dune movie and read the book, you'll understand what I mean. They've cut out
Yeah.
But there are some amazing conversations that go on for decades.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people who are going to see this are going to be new to writing. So what advice would you give to them?
For new writers?
Yeah.
I would say for new writers or experienced writers or people who've been writing for hundreds of years. Pretty much the same thing. Keep reading everything you can. Keep writing all the time. Don't stop writing. And be persistent. Continue, be persistent. And if especially when something's got to the point where you feel it's ready to be published, or at least begin editing, or you're trying to get it out, whether it's self-publishing or through a publisher, or if it's to a producer and you're trying to, if it's a script for a movie. One thing I've found is being persistent. And if you really believe in it and what it is that you've written, of not giving up and keeping at it. Sometimes it can take, I think, especially beginning writers think, me included, I think lots of times, oh, this is done. Now everybody will want to publish it now. And why aren't they? And or a couple months later or half a year later and say, oh, nobody's taking it. Well, I'm not going to write anymore. Nobody likes it, blah, 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 blah. But just being persistent of just year after year. And if people give you feedback and say they like it for this reason, or don't like it for this other reason, or they'd like to publish it, but it doesn't have enough of this, or it has too much of that, or have you thought of this idea? Really take into consideration, and be okay with reworking what you've done. Don't just dismiss it and say, no, it's got to be how I said, and if or nobody, I'm not going to let anybody do it if it's not exactly how I said. They might be wrong, and you might keep it how you originally wrote it, but really take it to heart what people suggest, especially if a number of people keep saying the same thing. They may be right, and it's okay to rewrite, and it can be disheartening, I think, but that's part of continuing to be persistent and being willing to change. So,
well, to quote Hemingway, you'll type 100 pages, you'll only keep one.
yeah, yeah.
I think he was sober at the time, or between bottles,
Or,
but
or he wrote
he,
the 100, or he wrote the 100 pages when he was drunk, and then he made that statement when he wasn't.
When he wasn't, yes. But to think that Hemingway was a better writer drunk than most of us are sober is disheartening to consider the works we missed out on because he was drunk.
He was.
Most of his, the Hemingway papers, just the amount of unfinished novels and ideas he had.
Yeah, yeah. When somebody's, I don't think if you're alcoholic, and a lot of writers have been, or still are.
Well, there was at that period where writers were only published if they knew somebody, and to know somebody, you had to be you had to be in the gentleman's club. You had to know a publisher.
Right.
And so,
and they would get together and drink. So,
yeah, and the social life. And he was a raging alcoholic by the age 30 or 40 or something.
Yeah.
He didn't start that way.
That's interesting.
He was a young reporter who was sent to the Spanish Civil War. He didn't stop. Yeah, and that's where he got for whom the bell tolls.
His granddaughter is going to be in our next movie.
That is awesome.
Yeah, Mariel.
Yeah,
Mariel, anyway. So
she's also somewhat of a writer, I believe.
I don't think she's
dabbles. I don't think she's published, has she?
No. She's mostly she's done acting and a lot of activism for different projects, and really advocating for mental health for a lot of people as well as.
Well, yeah, you can understand. I mean, there's that alcoholism and mental health are a problem.
Yeah, and she talks a lot about growing up and all the mental health issues with her sister.
I myself experienced issues.
Mm-hmm. I think we all have to different degrees at different times.
Yes. Sometimes when I go back and read what I write, even myself, I go, oh boy.
I know. I hate it when that happens. You write something
And it's not what you thought.
and you
It's
think, you think, oh, this is so good. It's the best thing ever. And then you read it later and there's like total trash.
That's not what I wrote. That's not what I wrote. I swear, God, that is not what I wrote.
Yeah. I'm
It
telling you,
wasn't me, Your Honor.
believe
It
me.
wasn't me. Believe me, Your Honor, I'm innocent. But I mean, I believe it comes down to stress and how you deal with it.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not very good at dealing with stress, and of course, that triggers mental health issues. How do you deal with stress?
Well, as I mentioned before, one of the latest books is about mindful meditation and practicing that for many years. That's one of the key ways that I deal with stress is being able to find ways to pause and notice and observe whatever sensations I'm having, whatever I'm feeling, and whatever I'm thinking in the moment, and not being caught in those thinking that's who I am. So if I'm thinking, oh, I've got to get this done, I've got to get this done. Or what are they going to think about it? What are they going to think about it if I don't get it done in time, etc. And getting anxious about it. If I can pause, take a breath, and just notice that that's what I'm thinking and watch those thoughts come and go without being caught in them, then that reduces stress. So a lot of mindful meditation, a lot of the results they have found actually in a lot of research is that it helps reduce stress, it helps with your health in numerous ways. It actually reduces heart problems and a lot of things. So that and yoga and doing exercise and reading and writing, singing, playing music, those all help.
Yes, yoga is good for joint flexibility, blood flow. If you have blood flow extremity problems, yoga. If you've ever had an accident and you've suffered muscle degradation, yoga is a perfect exercise because it doesn't involve weight stress.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't live and breathe writing 24/7. What do you do when you're not writing?
I sometimes do things in the garden, not as much lately, but I have for a number of years. But mostly reading, writing, doing social network, trying to get. I do practice playing the ukulele um, and spending time with talking with family, and so those are things. Those are most of the things. I don't have any other. Luckily, nothing that I do besides that is really expensive.
Well, I recommend everybody to have something to do, but if you're writing, it is great to read.
Yeah,
Study your genre.
yeah,
If you're study your genre, know your genre. I don't care what people are telling me when it comes to what my genre is, because you don't have to do every trope. That's when it becomes, because tropes are a guideline, not cliches to be inserted every time.
mm-hmm.
It's like you may have a hero with a catchphrase. That's if he does it all the time, by the 20th chapter, it's worn off. The novelty is in the moment,
Yeah,
and it's with TV tropes. You heard it. I find that the best source of tropes because they also give you the references where they're used, and you'll find there's like lots of tropes. Like I'm dealing with cast herds. I'm dealing with my elves are better than your elves. I'm dealing with not everybody is evil. you can pick and choose your tropes. You don't have to do all 199 tropes in science fiction, because I'm actually science fantasy, the combination of science and fantasy. And when I tell people, Star Wars isn't science fiction, it's science fantasy, they just rip their hair out, because they don't actually understand that the Force is just magic.
Yeah.
And
you actually don't have to do any tropes at all.
No, you don't. That's another thing.
Or create your own trope.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to include every trope. You don't have to include any. I mean, one of the defining tropes of the murder mystery, that just look at now I'm trying to think, the one man, just popped into my head. I think is it Michael Caine? He does a one-man mystery. He did a one-man mystery, murder mystery, where he played every role. It made television. You'd think a movie, it wouldn't stick, having only one actor do every role. I mean, it's amazing. And the thing is, it's you know who did it, you know what happened, but you watch it anyway. And that's the power of writing. That is not the power of the acting. That's not the power of the music or the lighting or any of those things that go in there. But it's the power of the writer and the power of the imagination of the audience. You reach an audience. Everybody will. Some people reach a bigger audience than others. But I know it's stressful, but some people I've met, they don't get stressed because they write what they know and they're comfortable with what they've written.
Yeah.
And of course, you could find your books on Amazon. Is that the only platform you're on, or are you on other platforms?
It's a lot of them books are in Barnes and Noble also, and on Amazon and a few independent bookstores as well. So,
right, I have the links below to your Amazon for your 3 books. Of course, follow. I haven't asked people before, but when you go to Amazon, follow an author. You can click their name, get all their books. I urge people to, give a review, but it's like 1,000 people watch, 100 people click the link, maybe 10 people buy, 1 person might read a review. It's the rules of tens, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
But it's a grind, and I pretty much of all the jobs I've had, I love writing.
What got you into writing in the beginning?
Well, I started with I got hooked on role playing games. So, and I started creating. I created a fantasy world that built into a sprawling empire of elves. And so, what I've done is I've taken my empire and its end days with the end of the Ice Age, the Great Flood, and I said, well, what are they going to do now? Off to the Pleiades we go, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. Well, first to Mars. Oh, shit, this planet's covering in ice. It's flooding. It's really a broken down wreck. Off to Mars, and while we're at Mars, we'll build lots and lots of more ships. Strip the planet of all the topsoil, everything we can, and zip off to somewhere with bigger, younger, more brighter stars, bigger planets, and yeah. So I've taken my fantasy empire and turned it into a space empire 10,000 years later.
Wow, that's cool. I hadn't even thought about what gets people started in writing. I hadn't thought of playing games and how that does, but you're right. I mean, just especially if you think about it now, there's all these video games that are getting made into movies,
Yeah,
and it just yeah, yeah, and the gaming industry, as you know, is huge, and
it is
and they
because
all
of the
have,
movie industry.
and they all have stories for
Yeah,
all these games, and that makes a lot of sense if you were really into games, and that's how you started writing stories. So
yeah. Actually, I actually made a game. I got published. It was a children's game, and of course, once that genre is so full now, you get and the money wasn't there at the time. That's back when the gaming industry was. You'd be lucky to make $1 off a sale. Nowadays, of course, you have Ubisoft making $3 billion just off one game.
right,
But they had the courage and the vision to invest money, money that a lot of people didn't have. Ubisoft, EA games like EA, Blizzard. You look at Blizzard, it started as a passion project.
hmm, hmm. What was the first game that you remember playing that had a story to it?
Um, a story. Most games didn't have a story, I think, until Baldur's Gate.
Oh, okay.
There were other games before that, but I don't think they really had a story.
The other ones were just trying to get from here to there and do
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
evil, one page, Evil
yeah,
King or Evil Dungeon,
yeah,
Dungeon. Most of when I was young, most of the games were small. Like the first real, like I remember when Doom came out, and that was such a jump in gaming technology. And
mm,
then you had the ISO games like Baldur's Gate and all the other different Dungeons and Dragons titles, which eventually became, like from one title to 100 titles.
yeah.
Um, But I just remembered, I forgot there was a game before that that had a story, Zork, and it was one of the first games
Oh,
I
I
played.
remember that. Yeah,
The game was the story.
yeah, I remember that game.
Yes, the game was the story.
Mm,
Um, you basically had to basically although it was very simplistic, they
yeah,
basically stolen all the treasures, and you got to go into the underground and get them back. But
yeah, yeah. Isn't it amazing to think about? There's like hardly any of this was around just like 20 years ago.
yeah,
It's just literally in a couple decades, just over a couple decades, it everything has changed as far as
just think,
gaming and writing and
you think with AI, I mean, I remember back when we were doing, I was doing programming at university, and we were looking at rendering software and at the conceptual level of you have the stick figures, you have your vertices, and you have your final product, and the computer would render the 20 frames. You know,
mm,
you had just by doing the curves between, and the programming that went into that was pages and pages and pages of
yeah,
code,
yeah,
and most computers struggled with that much code, and
right,
this was just basic. The stick figures would just be templates for placing the images in post rendering. The images would be drawn, and they would just pose. The stick figures were poses for the artists to draw from,
right,
and this was what one of the methods used by Disney originally was. They'd have all the stick figures and then they would have the artists, and they would pose the cell and do it frame by frame. So that gave the illusion of what they now called skeletons, and that skeleton artistry. And now, of course, you have all the vertices, and you have this one has 560 polygons, and this one has they're just originally they were only doing was 6, and those,
Oh,
that's why Mickey Mouse was always the same way, and the
yeah.
Donald Duck, they had to reuse so many cells. Same with Hanna-Barbera, but Hanna-Barbera, right, pre-drawing, pre-rendering, reusing, single frame, scenes, all those things have gone out the window, because now you can plug it all into I forget the name of the software, but it's basically it's a
After
extent. It's a combination of it takes the I think it's Macromedia package, because it's got all, and so you plug it into so it's After Effects plugin, it's all the Macromedia stuff, but not as standalone. It's all as plugins to, I think, to 3D Render Max. It's on the Iris. It's not on the PC, and
right,
they take the verses, they layer the characters, and they're not rendering characters; they're rendering scenes.
right, right. When you think
So,
it was just like 20 years ago, it was as big a
yeah,
change then just to have the internet and all the games that's starting. It's like those are some of the biggest changes in ever. And now I've been reading for the last couple of weeks about how AI is going to be even a bigger change than that was.
yeah, because what it'll do is like take the castle scene in Hogwarts. They had a guy do the grounds.
Mm-hmm.
Guy placed the tree, texturing, layering, the lights, the windows. Then you'd have like 160 guys were working on computers to draw that whole opening scene for
Right,
Hogwarts.
right,
Back when I was at university, we were looking at AI already taking stick figures, and between the two with all the you just fill in the movement lines and it would render in between. Well, now they're doing that with 3D Studio Max AI, where basically, hey, what texture? Boom. Your landscape. You here, the landscape. Back in the 90s already, the landscape is just a 3D. Is a I forget what it's called, but it creates the landscape from a single mathematical digit.
mm,
So you go, right, here's the landscapes, and you just pick it. You just go down all the landscapes. You can render. It's I forget the name of the program, but this is 20-year-old technology, but it's
uh,
never been put together where one person sits at it, just goes down the list. Pick your landscape.
wow,
Just go down the list, and the computer is filling it in. You could go into the macro level and change vertices, and you watch the numbers change in real time. Everything is mathematically modeled.
yeah, yeah,
So you don't have 20 guys. You have all their past work in 3D models, and the libraries are getting bigger and bigger and bigger by the day.
yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, I remember the 3D landscapes, and you just plug in a number, and it just goes, okay, this is what it looks like as a landscape. And you can give that number to anybody with that software, and it'll create the same thing. That's how a lot of these programs work. They have everything is a branching vertices where right, like a tree,
Mm,
and
right,
you just and so whatever number you give to any, that will always produce that tree, that or that person or so, because all the numbers break down. It's like an encryption. All the numbers break down to different components.
right,
So blue eyes have a code, but it's all instead of having a list, you just have it as one big long number. I don't know why it works out that way, but
mm,
it seems to work out that way.
mm, mm,
But it's getting to the point now where they're doing it with books, um, where they take taken the entire library of Agatha Christie, and written what she could, rewritten her works, creating more works off it, and being able to derive even more works off it than that. And I believe she's probably, just never ending. I think just pretty much every scenario, try to see how many scenarios they can come up with, and
Yeah.
just plus when you add to that, if I believe they get access to the FBI database, even though they're 20-year-old cases, they would just expand it even further, be able to add even more investigations and many different types of investigations. The murder mysteries on it will be just pretty much a mathematical number by the time they're finished. But it's what we're dealing with. How do we deal with it? How are we going to have made by, are we going to have to, well, we are going to be competing and basically edged out.
Yeah, I think that.
Because the big studios are pouring money into this. They are.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's one of the issues, of the many issues that the Writers Guild is trying to negotiate with the studios right now. Is and one reason they went on strike, because that was one of the things they wanted included. I don't know how they can control it, but yeah.
I don't think you can, because eventually, as more and more people come out of university trained on AI tools, they're going to want to use AI tools like Grammarly, ProWritingAid, Correct It, Hemingway. The list goes on. Of course, already controversy over Scriver plugins, where you could track your characters, you could track your screen time, you can, everything is by the numbers now. Studios have those books, and those books have been turned into mathematical AIs. I believe there's the mathematics of psychology, where they are trying to come up, with personality number types and create trees and branches where they can go, right, this is the personality type, and study the behavior, so they can create 16 trope characters they can plug into any movie. It's the amount of research going into AI and the many branches going into AI, and you lose track of reading it all. And it's, because as a science fiction writer, you're always looking at technology, just going,
Yeah.
it's changed again. They've dropped this concept and they're going with a different concept. And originally it was just decision trees. Now they're three-dimensional. They're cones.
Do you think that do you think you would ever use AI to write a story that of one of yours, and just talk to it and say, this is the story and this is how I would like it to be? Or do you think you'll always just write it yourself, step by step?
I think I'll write it step by step because I enjoy it. But unfortunately, those who are coming through the training, they'll eventually be introduced to AI, because the university will want to push their AI into the public sphere. Because a lot of these AIs, I mean, I remember back, this was, 96, 98, they were trying to push their version of the B tree. But by the time they finished it, I don't know exactly what happened, but somebody else had come up with something so similar that they had to drop it. So, but millions of dollars wasted. But that's what universities do. They develop stuff because they get that's how they keep getting their endowments. So if they don't push their AI, somebody else does. That the companies who are paying for this, they'll put the money into that university. So Princeton, Harvard, they're going to push AI because that will give them the billion-dollar endowments.
Right.
And of course, not this next generation, not the Zoomers, but the whatever the double down is, the alpha or the betas, whatever the double down is, they're going to head towards the omegas, where they're sitting there, with their AI at the school table, and they don't know how to do 1 + 1 or anything like that. It's just they're just sitting there with the teacher on screen, and they'll say, and you are learning how to just merely interface with the AI. No thinking, no everything's they're going to be walking around with their phones all the time, controlled by their AI, because that's all they know. Because the universities want those billions and
People
money.
are already walking around with their phones all the time. So
Exactly. That's
yeah,
what I mean. It's a progression. AI progression that's where it's headed, where
yeah.
their entire entertainment, they'll ask the phone to tell them a story. It'll be like, and that story will come to them eventually as a movie. The studios will put themselves out of work. This is ultimately what will happen with AI is,
Hmm.
look at, you go back to the writing pool when they brought in computers. The computers took out a lot of the writers first, then took out a lot of the editors, and now they're looking at computers replacing the lawyers, the accountants. Already doing all the accounting, but you know what I mean. It'll further reduce the AI accountant. I found, hey boss, I think I have an idea. No, the computer will go, bingo. Here's how to maximize your next this budget. You're not going to spend 250 billion on this movie. You're going to spend 150 million, and this is how it's going to be. And that's what you know. And eventually, the studios will go, why do we need a showrunner? Boink. Here's showrunner 2.0. See, once you get down that track of replacing people with computers, it just keeps going, right?
Yeah. Well, it sounds exciting.
Yes. So
Or
all you youngsters out there,
scary.
take note. Before you think of replacing somebody, you will eventually replace yourself with an android. Eventually, the director will be replaced by an android. The actors will be digital. Well, I think the writers, they're looking right now, and I believe you've missed out on an article yesterday might have come out about Disney wanting to get perpetuity on their voice actors. So I think the voice actors haven't caught on to that yet, but they should be out once they realize what's going on, because they'll be out. They'll be permanently replaced. There'll be no new voice actors. It'll all be
Yeah.
maximized by AI within 10 years. And so out with the script writers, out with the voice actors. Digital actors will be Star Wars in perpetuity, would be all digital. Half your movies will be pixelated. I forget the name of the software. I think it's 3D Max Studio, something like that. It's actually Pixar started as a plugin on 3D Max, but I think it's expanded to the point it's its own program. But you've got Macromedia and all those companies, which is a subsidiary of Adobe. They're all pushing to their software to be used because the studios will pay them billions of dollars a year whereas what can they get off the public? $30-$40 a month, and people don't want to pay those subs, but the studios, they'll pay. That's where we're at. It's unfortunate. Our own tools, the rise of AI isn't going to be the android kicking in our door. It's just unemployment.
Yeah.
It's not the dystopia you want, but it's a dystopia you're going to have. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, Dune is a post-AI society. It said, look, AI put us all out of work. We rebel. AI is the great enemy. Sorry, Dune fans. Sorry, Dune fans. Anyway, thank everybody for coming. Thank you, Gabriel, for your time, and I hope people check out your book. Links are in the description below, as well as mine. And everybody have a great day. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.